Hey guys, we're back. Hopefully we don't sound like robots this time. Today we have the Green Bay Packers versus the Chicago Bears that we need to break down, Drew. And like I said before, I got the scores kind of right. I picked the Packers to score 10. I picked the Bears to have a 3 in their number. Only I said 31 instead of 3. Didn't quite go the way I'd hoped for. Also, we have Antonio Brown and all his shenanigans and everything that means for Oakland. We're going to talk about the latest update and what that means for everybody. Tyreek Hill and his new contract. We're going to go over that briefly. And we're also going to talk about Week 1 and our predictions for everything that's going to happen. So we're going to get you guys caught up on everything, what you need to pay attention to. We're going to talk about what we see as, the turning points for a lot of these games. And like I said, we're going to make these picks. Hopefully you fade them so you can win some money if you're betting on any of these things.
Nathan, thank you for telling us it's better. The Cans are back. We're glad they're back. We're excited football's here. But, man, I was disappointed in Week 1.
I was disappointed in Facebook.
Wow.
You guys caught up on everything what you need to pay attention to. But I'm also back on track. You were disappointed with the first game?
Yeah.
Really? You saw it as a little bit more of a... I don't know. I like the defense. I knew Green Bay's defense was going to be okay, bringing in both Zadarius and Preston Smith. I knew that this was going to be one of those things that we're going to see this defense eventually get there. And I didn't think they were going to be tough, but I thought they were going to at least be good, right? That somewhere in the middle where Green Bay can actually play a little bit of defense now, and how's that going to change the team? They dominated the Bears. Maybe it's because of the rivalry, Drew, but that defensive line was blowing up the Chicago offensive line almost on every play.
Chris, good to see you, man. Glad you could join us. No, I am disappointed because those offensive lines and those quarterbacks were not ready for Week 1, including Aaron Rodgers. I think it's very important. Everyone's sitting there, look how bad Mitch Trubisky looked. Aaron Rodgers didn't look any better. And I get he was going against the Bears defense. I get that. But so was Mitch Trubisky going against this new vamped Packers defense that looked really good. Both offensive lines look absolutely atrocious during that game. And let's be completely honest here. I think all the people that are saying the preseason is exactly the way it should stay, none of these quarterbacks played a single snap in preseason. Not one snap.
And I think that's part of the reason it looks so ugly. And a lot of the offensive linemen didn't play a lot. The Bears especially sat everybody almost through the entire preseason. I think when you look at that and you see what the product looked like on Week 1, this is an example of that we do still need the preseason. Yeah. It doesn't maybe need to be 4 games, but maybe it needs to be 2, and we see a lot more of the starters for those preseason games. Or something else, because I think Matt Nagy, as much as I like him as a coach, I think there's a difference between him and the top-tier coaches, because a bad coach will stick with what he's doing, whether it's working or not, or when it's not working, he'll just stick and not make any adjustments. A good coach finds a way to make something work and then sticks with that, and I think that's where Matt Nagy falls in. I think the greatest coaches in the NFL can look at the way a game's going and say, that game plan we set up and what we want to do, it's not really working for us. Maybe we need to try to switch it up, because I get it when you look on paper, guys like Montgomery and Mike Davis were not having a ton of success, but when you watch them run, their most successful runs were coming right up the middle when the Bears kind of spread things out a little bit. They never attacked up the gut. They were always trying to run outside. They were always trying to get creative and get guys in space. Sometimes you just got to play smash mouth football when that's available to you. Mike Daniels is gone off of Green Bay. They lost their biggest and best defensive tackle that's been there for years. To me, it's a simple thing. I'm at least going to test to see if I can run my power back up through the tackles. They didn't really try it.
Yeah.
And a couple times they did. They got like 5 or 6 yards.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Matt Nagy definitely needs to decide what his team is offensively. Are they a smash mouth football team where they got those big backs like Davis and Montgomery to smash at the middle, and needs to keep with it? I mean, that's why you've seen teams like the Seahawks succeed well, because they're going to run the ball at the middle 10, 15 times a game, regardless if it works or not. And then they'll sit there and throw it over the top. And I also fully believe in a one-down or one-back system. I get you need a guy that comes in there and takes over when the guy gets tired, but you need to make a decision. Is it Montgomery? Is it Davis? You need to make that decision. I think splitting the carries, I believe it was Montgomery got 6, Davis got 5. That's not enough time for these guys to start developing behind that offensive line, creating rhythm, and getting somewhere. And if I had an option, to be honest, I think Montgomery looked better out of the two, but maybe I'm a Montgomery guy. But there is definitely an issue with the Bears' offensive play calling. Matt Nagy actually said, it starts with him playing or calling better plays offensively. That does not work. 3 points is not good, but man, I see all your guys' comments, and Will, I gotta say one thing. He says Packers are not that great. I don't think anyone put great behind the Packers.
That performance was great.
But that team defensively did a very great job stopping an offense like the Bears. They got them literally off their plan for that game. There's no way that he sat there and said, Trubisky's going to throw 45 times this game. There's no way that this is exactly how
I think they do. Went. That's what Matt Nagy wants to do. He wants to throw the ball almost all the time, and he wants his running plays to be short little dump-offs to the running back, and that's how you get your rushing yards, quote unquote. I think this is a scheme problem. He said it was on him. I totally agree with that. I think this is Matt Nagy being too stubborn to say, this is the way I want the team to be instead of this is what my team can do. Again, when you saw some of these rushes up the middle, they should have been attacking the Packers between the tackles where Preston and Zadarius Smith weren't going to go create all that havoc on the outside. It was obvious your tackles were getting dominated. You needed to push the ball up the gut until you were sure that wasn't going to work, because everyone knows the Packers just spent big money on those edge rushers. They have spent no money on their D tackles and got rid of the only good one they had.
Yeah, Jeremy's with you. He says he likes defensive games, and he says the Smiths were monsters. There's no doubt about it, they were.
Absolutely.
They played great. And
and the Bears were just
I called it during the offseason. I said I love both these moves by the Packers, bringing these guys in. Ian saying 18 punts. He says boring. He's kind of with me. And Chris says, dude, what a dud of a game. Also, he hates the Super Bowl champs didn't play. That's what the NFL gets. I get it, man, but what shouldn't have happened was last year's game, this being the starting of the game. This makes sense on, NFL 100 to play the oldest rivalry in the NFL, but it's something else when this game goes 10-3, just like another game that we could think of that was pretty boring to watch.
Yeah, well, it was 13-3. Okay, well, a little more offense in that game.
Well, okay, but it's close enough.
We've had two defensive struggles back-to-back in the NFL, but I'm with you. I think this 100% should have been the Super Bowl champs. I think the Bears should have been a little bit sharper. I think Matt Nagy should have come off the pass a little bit, but I guess he's a head coach and I'm not, so maybe I shouldn't complain too much. I also think Mitch Trubisky looked down his receivers too much. I mean, he was just following Allen Robinson for the whole game. I was disappointed not to see someone like Anthony Miller or Riley Ridley out there trying something different. In the third and fourth quarter, when you're like, okay, this game has not gone the way we needed to, and we're down, but we're only down a touchdown, why were you not trying to get other people engaged? I mean, they tried it with Taylor Gabriel a little bit. The pass interference call kind of set him back. Beyond that, they did not really try to spread the ball out much at all. It was pretty much Allen Robinson, Tyreek Cohen out of the receiving, or bust. Yeah. So, again, they were way too
Robinson
predictable.
had 7 receptions. Cohen had 8. That's 15 out of his 26 receptions, and it wasn't pretty. I mean,
absolutely.
Let's talk about Trubisky's performance, because I know a lot of people are sitting there going, this guy, what a dud in the start of year 3 for him. They expected such high hopes out of this guy. Realistically, even though he only had 1 interception, he should have had 4.
Yeah.
I mean, 3 interceptions by the Green Bay defensive backs literally dropped it right in their hands. I mean, this guy got a little bit lucky when it comes to that, but when you look at the offensive line, they held 0 blocks. I mean, this guy was constantly out of his rhythm.
And I think that's happened to Aaron Rodgers. I talked about it during the game.
Exactly.
Where Aaron Rodgers was feeling the pressure, it threw him out of his game. Yes, he had the pass to Jimmy Graham and got the touchdown, but you could tell he was off most of the night, too. Yeah. He was throwing the ball before he had to in some plays. In some plays, the time wasn't there. So that's what a good defensive front can do. That's what every defensive coordinator's dream is, right? You throw the quarterbacks off the rhythm. The difference is Aaron Rodgers is like 33, 34-year-old veteran that's been to Super Bowls and everything else. Mitch Trubisky's a guy that barely played in college, has a couple of years of experience. I want to see a guy that's that young getting some action in the preseason, so he's ready for a game like this.
Ian says, after last night, I have faith in Detroit taking the NFC North champs.
Well, you called it. I think you're the only guy on it, but you're on it, and we've got that marked down. Also, Chris said he's with you. He says, feed Montgomery. I would pick one. Mike Davis, Montgomery. You can even rotate a little bit if you're playing that much smash mouth football and you're running the ball a lot. The moral of the story is, as soon as you get to the halftime and you're like, wow, we put up 3 points, and it was ugly almost all the way through, you got to make some adjustments. They never made any adjustments on offense at all.
Yeah. Nathan says, no. You guys got it wrong. That Bears defense was ridiculous last night. I cannot believe they lost. They lost. Their offense is terrible. Well, I hate to tell you this, man, but it doesn't matter how good your defense is. Your offense doesn't perform, and your defense doesn't put up points, you lose games.
Definitely.
So regardless if their offense is terrible, their team didn't win. And I agree with you. Their defense played really, really well.
And I'm with Rob here. It's because they didn't have the consistency in the ground game. And I think that's just part of the flaws with Matt Nagy as your head coach. He wants to run his system, and it doesn't matter. Come hell or high water, we're throwing the rock.
And that's the right thing to do when you sat there and preached it all preseason long game where it's like, okay, this is what we're sticking with. But I'm telling you right now, they did not go into this game.
Great coaches make adjustments.
But they did not go in this game saying Trubisky's going to throw 45 times.
I think they did.
No way, dude.
I think they did.
No
I really
way,
do.
Man.
I don't know that 45 was
happened.
I don't think 45 was the number that they were like, okay, we got to get to 45 throws. But I think they've expected this to be a wide open passing offense. That's what they want to be. Even though they've got these two great power backs, even though, yes, Tyreek Cohen is more of a receiver and probably the most talented out of the three to this point, unless Dave Montgomery just takes off. But I think you still, when you have a defense like that, it's okay to play conservative. It's okay to run a little bit.
This game was never out of their hands. They were one touchdown away from, at one point in time, winning, and then one time tying. You could still run the rock when you're just a touchdown behind. I'm agreeing with you. Nagy should have changed his plays up. But there's no way they went this game and said, all right, we're going to throw about 45 times. It's going to be a great... No, they were going in there. It's going to be 50-50, and he got away from it, and he got excited, in a sense, and he started calling these plays to throw the ball, and his offensive line wasn't holding. So that's why you see Tyreek Cohen get 8 receptions for 49 yards. It was literally just dump-off passes. It was quickly get it out as quick as you can and try to make something to happen. And that Packers defense came to tackle. I mean, we said this multiple times watching Montgomery run. We're like, look at him move. He looks great. Problem is, he breaks the tackle,
and there's two other
guys waiting for him.
Yep. And it was the same thing with Aaron Jones. We said the same thing for everyone who drafted Aaron Jones is probably thinking they're an idiot at this point, but I got to say this, man. The Bears swarmed the ball just as much as we thought they would. Their defense was everything we expected them to be. No one expected the Packers to do this. I don't know whether they just rose to the occasion because it's Chicago and they hate each other, or whether this is what we're going to expect week in and week out from Chicago or from Green Bay with those great defensive ends and some athletic linebackers that are starting to come up behind them, like Martinez.
Yeah, I mean, Blake Martinez is definitely a very underrated player. He looked really good in last night's game.
Now, Jeremy said the Amos pick was a terrible lob from Mitch Trubisky. It was, and he stared him down. I bet you there probably was a little bit of that. I practiced against this guy. I'm ready for it kind of reaction from Amos where he just, if you watch, he was supposed to be covering center of the field, and then as soon as that drop back started to happen, he saw Robinson going to the corner. He's like, I know where it's going, and he met him there.
Yeah, Amos definitely got the better of the two. Clinton Dix. He played well, but he wasn't as much as a game changer as Amos was for sure.
Yep, I absolutely agree. One more final thought, I think, from this game here. Everyone is ready to kill Mitch Trubisky. I've seen some of the national guys talk about, are the Bears thinking about moving on from Mitch Trubisky? This is the same guy you were telling me, like, in the offseason how much upside he has and how he's a top 12 or top 15 quarterback. It's one game from a guy who has not played much in forever. Yeah. It's going to take a couple weeks to get everything firing on an offense. And the same thing for the Packers. Don't panic, especially because neither of these teams have played much. This is why you need to see your starters in the preseason. Even though we want people to be rested and people to be healthy, the teams that play them are going to be more ready for week one. And this is why it's so tough to pick these games early on. Because more often than not, it's who's more prepared rather than who's actually better.
And the Steelers play a primetime game on Sunday night. That will be out on Sunday when we talk about that game. I'm going to do one more comment. I'm going to do my last thoughts on that game. Steven says the Bears will be like the Jags last season, all hype, great D, but their quarterback will hold them back all season. Do you believe Mitch Trubisky won't rebound from this game one?
No, he'll be fine. I think part of their problem is the game plan thing. I don't think he's good enough to be the guy that throws 45 times and you win, but I think Matt Nagy needs to mature a little bit as a head coach and as a play caller and say, look, I need to deal with what I have. Mitch Trubisky can be a good, I hate the term game manager, but that's almost the way you want to use him, where you're going to make some more conservative throws. When you have this good of a defense, you don't need to go put up 45 points. You need to put up like 21 and then let the defense do the rest of the work. The problem here is they're throwing the ball all over the lot from the get-go. It's okay to use these running backs that you have. It was okay to use Jordan Howard last year, and they didn't really do that. So I think this is a Matt Nagy thing more than it is a Trubisky thing. Yeah, Trubisky looked bad, but guess who's calling the plays that couldn't make it work with their quarterback? And I like Matt Nagy. It's just you have to adapt.
Edward says his Steelers will win Sunday night. #fact.
That is going to be the game of the week, I think. Patriots,
we'll see,
Steelers.
Man. Last thoughts on the Bears and Packers game. I think you got to look exactly like it was last year. The Packers won week one against the Bears. The Bears went off 12-4 or something like that and won the division. I mean, let's pump the brakes on sitting there saying that the Bears have a lot of problems. They had problems last year. They're going to fix it and move forward. As far as the Packers go, as long as Aaron Rodgers is healthy, which he was not last year, I think the Packers have a very, very fair chance of competing with the Bears at the top.
And Edwards also saying that Trubisky is the Dak of the Bears. Potentially, yeah, but you can use that kind of quarterback when you have this good of a defense and still win games. The difference is the Cowboys know, hey, we got this great running back. Well, let's use Zeke Elliott a little bit. Instead, Matt Nagy's saying, let me ask this guy to throw the ball 45 times like every game. And that's just unsustainable. In my opinion, it's unsustainable. Even though they have good receivers and you're not going to play defense like this every week, you shouldn't be asking any offense to do that when you can get away with running the ball, especially to rest your great defense. So, again, I'm all on this. To me, was all Matt Nagy coming up short. We'll move on, though. Let's talk Antonio Brown.
Let's do it.
Antonio Brown, if you haven't heard, mixed it up with Mike Mayock again. I guess calling him all kinds of racial slurs, and I'm not the guy that gets real into that. I don't really, I think we're kind of overblowing it, where he was fighting him, telling him he was going to hit him and everything like that. And then, apparently, had a tearful apology for the team, and now he's back on playing Monday Night Football. So, my question to you, Drew, is what is going on? What is going on in Oakland? They were just talking about suspending him, and now they're like, oh, he's playing Monday. Don't worry.
You don't pay a guy this much money to suspend him. I think they're going to throw it up to passion of the game and passion of what, Mike Mayock is a passionate guy. We all know Antonio Brown's a passionate guy. They're going to sit there and say that their passion's got the best of them. And they're going to notch it up to the fact that it was a mistake.
Shake hands and make up.
Exactly. Problem is how many mistakes do you give Antonio Brown?
A lot, because he's very talented. This is like, if this is your fourth receiver, he'd be gone in a heartbeat, right? We saw it with Martavis Bryant. He did a lot less and got a lot fewer chances in Oakland last year. The difference is Martavis Bryant versus Antonio Brown, even though they're both former Steeler receivers, they know Antonio Brown can be the best receiver in football.
Right.
I'm not saying he is, but they know he has that potential to be. They want him on the field bad enough that it doesn't matter that you're throwing TVs off of hotel balconies. It doesn't matter that you're hurting yourself getting off the air balloon at training camp. It doesn't matter as long as you can kind of bring it back together. And I think this is exactly what's showing that, where the Raiders, for all their talk, for everything else, as soon as Antonio Brown came back and he was like, you know what, I'm sorry, maybe I overreacted, they were like, dude, it's cool. Just get out of the field, please.
All right, Steven said the Raiders never talked about suspending him. The media did. All right, man. Adam Schefter was the one that released it. They were talking about suspending him. But as soon as that was released, the Raiders did not go out right off the bat and said that is not.
They did also say don't expect him Monday night. And now they're saying do expect him Monday night.
They did not go out there and say that is false accusations. AB's playing. Yes, the media is going to create something, and they always do. They want to be the first person to say anything. That's how Adam Schefter has made his millions, is the fact that he has always been one of the first people to ever say something about what's going on in the NFL. But if that's a fact, the Raiders should have went out there and defended their player. They did not off the bat.
Which tells you there's some truth to it.
So there must have been something behind it.
Absolutely. Also, Edward wants to know, is Big Ben still the issue now that AB has left, or is AB just insane? I do believe Antonio Brown has some mental issues. I think it's not all firing up there upstairs in the attic, whatever you want to call it. I think when you look at Antonio Brown and what we've seen for everyone, I saw something, I think it was ESPN I was watching today, it might have been Fox Sports, where they were talking about it, and they're like, oh, the reason the Steelers fell apart is because of Big Ben and Mike Tomlin's relationship. I was like, is that the reason the Raiders are having all these problems? Like, no, I'm not buying into all that. I think Le'Veon wanted to get paid, and I think Antonio Brown was, I don't want to call him a prima donna because he's good, but he was having some of those prima donna moments for a guy that has proved that he has talent. That is a very, very hard thing to manage, and if you have to pick one guy, you usually pick the quarterback in today's NFL. I think it's not Big Ben's fault or anything like that. I think he did everything he could. There's just friction sometimes between guys that all want to be the reason the team succeeds. Sometimes it's all three of you, and I think that's what the Steelers kind of came from. So there is no right answer, but I can't point to Big Ben and be like, oh, this is all happening because of him.
Let me get a couple of these comments. Ian says the Steelers knew what they were doing when they got rid of him. Austin says AB may have been hit in the head a few times too many. And Jeremy says, I think the offense of the Raiders is going to be inconsistent because they're going to be pressured to give AB the ball so he won't have a meltdown. Now, we all know that Antonio Brown has always wanted the ball in his hands.
Right.
But he also knows that he can't do it all. I think he just wants his fair share of it.
Likely.
When I say fair share, the majority.
The good news for him, though, is the defense looks like it might be an issue out there in Oakland unless we have some guys step up, or maybe Cleveland Farrell's lives up to that 4th overall draft pick and they get instantly better. If that doesn't happen and the Raiders are not good on defense, he's going to have plenty of opportunities because I think the Raiders are going to have to do a lot of scoring to catch up with teams. So I think this is the ideal situation for him, is a team like Oakland that now has a halfway decent offensive line, another guy in Tyrell Williams, so it's not all about Antonio Brown, a running back that everyone's hoping Josh Jacobs can be, Jalen Richard is a receiving option. They've got a few guys on this offense, but they also have the star player that Antonio Brown wants to be, and he can go get those 10 catches a game as long as the Raiders are behind, and I think that's going to happen a good number of times this year.
Yeah, what's going on, Jonathan? Glad to see you, man. Steven says the media knew what happened and they blew it up. They also knew that people will believe it because it's Antonio Brown. I
still believe it, though.
He also goes off and says he has not read anyone from Oakland saying they would have suspended him. And he said, told us long ago we'll see during the season. Man, I'm still going to go right back to the fact that they didn't go out and defend their guy. I mean, that's one of the biggest things, it's not like the Raiders have to, make super tons of phone calls to get to the media and say, hey, that's not true. I mean, any of those guys that's a competitor to Adam Schefter would have took a phone call from the Raiders sitting there saying...
If this was Ian Rappaport, I'd say, there's a good reason to doubt it, right? Because he throws out a lot of stuff because he wants to be first,
but I'm just saying,
we see a lot of stuff.
If there was a competitor against him, and the Raiders were calling him saying, hey, that's not true, we would have heard it right off the bat.
But because this is Adam Schefter, he's not the guy that's it needs to be first. Even though he's first a lot, he's the guy that's almost always right. We almost always see Adam Schefter report stuff that's actually going on in the organization. There are a lot of other people out there that want to be the first guy to a story and will just throw stuff out there, and they're not afraid to be wrong. We don't really see that out of Adam Schefter a lot. And again, this coming from Schefter tells me that there's probably some truth to it. Yeah. I don't know who his connection is in Oakland, but I'm guessing that he probably had it on pretty good authority to say the Raiders were planning on doing it. And then the plan changed when Antonio Brown came back and said, hey, you know what? Maybe I took things a little far.
And I'm agreeing with you, Steven. I still think Antonio Brown's going to have a heck of a season. I believe in Derek Carr. You're fine. I believe in Derek Carr, and I believe that they will get the ball heavily in Antonio Brown's hands. And we've all seen through the past that that's all that matters. Get the ball in AB's hands and watch him make magic happen. So I'm with you. As far as all this drama and everything that's coming along with it, when you're the Oakland Raiders and you've had pretty much a terrible season these last 2 seasons, realistically, it's any kind of positive is a positive, regardless if there's a little bit of negative behind it with it too. Nathan goes off and says he thinks that Josh Jacobs is going to benefit from Antonio Brown being on the field.
I think everyone in this offense will, most especially Derek Carr, but I like the way you're going with this. The question to me is how much are they going to throw to Josh Jacobs? We both think he's a decent receiver here, but they also have Jalen Richard, who's been in the organization for a while. Yeah. John Gruden likes him as the receiving back. If they use Josh Jacobs to catch a lot of these passes, especially in situations where Antonio Brown's going deep, that is where your running back can feast because there's going to be a lot fewer guys over the middle of the field to stop him. The question to me, though, is does he get those catches or is it Jalen Richard? I think everyone benefits from Antonio Brown being there. He takes so much attention away. I think it happened with Juju last year for the Steelers. I think he benefited from having a guy like Antonio Brown across from him. So until he proves it this year, that's why I'm a little bit out on Juju from a fantasy perspective.
Yeah, and I'm completely opposite. I believe in Juju. I think that guy's a stud, and
I think he's very good too.
And I don't think it. I mean, it was everyone benefits when a better player's on the field, but I think he's going to do it.
The best example I can come up with here: DeAndre Hopkins and Andre Johnson. When DeAndre Hopkins was playing with DeAndre Johnson, there was talk of, hey, does he evolve into that? And maybe he does. Maybe he takes up that step forward. And we talk about Juju being one of the best receivers in football after that. Until I see it, though, I'm not willing to bet on him just yet.
I want to get to one comment, and then I want to get to another real quick. Jeremy says, good to see you, man. He says, I've heard Schefter say that when someone gives him a story, he gets it confirmed before he breaks a story.
Right.
I believe that like 80% of the time. I'll give you that. I heard him also say that. I give him like 80%. Because when the story's too big and you know it's going out there, he wants to be the first one. Like I said, that's how he makes his millions. Jonathan says, Michael Vick, Hall of Fame worthy in his opinion. Do you believe that?
I think he was a very good quarterback. I don't think Michael Vick is a Hall of Famer. I think he changed the game. I think now we consider running quarterbacks much more viable because of him. but I don't think we've quite seen what we need to see out of Michael Vick to make the Hall of Fame. Maybe somewhere down the road. I mean, he's a big name, but I think especially, and this will come into the way that the guys who all the people voting these people into the Hall of Fame, the way they perceive him, I think the dogfighting kind of issue is going to be what keeps him off the field. Even though football is supposed to be all what's on the field, in the back of their minds, they're going to be thinking about that as well.
Jeremy, good to see you, man. He says, Bear defense scary.
We did talk about the Bears for a minute. The Bears defense looked great. Yeah. The offense was the issue.
So did the Packers defense.
Exactly. The Packers defense looked absolutely worrisome, too. If you're a Bears fan, you're hoping this is a fluke, and they just got up for this game. Because if the Packers put together half of a defense, this team could be scary.
Nathan's still on Josh Jacobs. He says Antonio will get those linebackers to back up a little bit and open up lanes for Josh Jacobs.
Precisely, but I think that's like the third down play, and I think third down might belong to Jalen Richard.
Not even that. Also, it's not just the third down. I don't think Josh Jacobs is the featured back. I agree with you. Richard is liked very well in the organization, especially heavily with Gruden. I think you're going to see a split 50-50. I think Richard's going to be out there for running downs too.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see. I think it'll be slightly less than 50-50. I think Richard probably takes about 35% of the touches, but I think he's going to be out there for a lot of the passing downs when the Raiders need to make things up and when you send Antonio Brown deep. So I think he's the biggest beneficiary here, even though Josh Jacobs, it's good to have a guy like that in the offense. No matter who you are, it's good to have a guy like that in the offense because he takes so much focus away from you that all you have to do is usually beat one guy. And I think Josh Jacobs is in a good position. I think Oakland's offense might be pretty good this year. Not great, but they might be the top 10 defense, maybe 12, maybe 13, but I think they're going to be at least in the middle of it.
Jonathan says Tom Brady directly affected the game, and he is a lock, ?
Are you talking about like with the cheating?
It's supposed to be all about on the field. No, okay, hold on. The whole difference between what Tom Brady did for the game for football and NFL and what Michael Vick did for the NFL is Tom Brady won and Michael Vick did not. And that's as much as and the problem with Michael Vick about being a Hall of Famer is those years he missed really affected his stats. And one of the biggest things that when Hall of Famers are looking at, Hall of Famer, what are they called, advisors, or the people that just make the decision on who's going to choose who goes into the Hall of Fame, that they rely heavily on stats. And he was one of the best running quarterbacks in the league. Unfortunately for him, that's not what those guys are looking for when they look at quarterbacks.
Right.
He would have not only would he have to run a lot, he'd have to run so much where he affects running back numbers.
Right.
Where he's sitting up there at the top 25 most yards running the ball for him to be a Hall of Famer. Don't get me wrong, man. Jonathan, I really like Michael Vick when he was playing. I think that if he would have not have been an idiot and got himself into trouble, we'd probably literally think about him being a Hall of Famer because the guy was talented. Not only could he run and run fast, he was very accurate for a left-handed thrower.
And you are right.
Which would have made him probably close to, not a first ballot Hall of Famer, but probably in the discussion of it.
And you are right. It is supposed to be all on the field, but it doesn't always wind up that way. I do think the dogfighting is going to be in the back of these Hall of Fame voters' minds, and that might weigh him down a little bit. I just think he's the guy who doesn't make it. Maybe 30, 40, 50 years from now, we don't have this backlog that we have right now, and they can safely put Michael Vick in the Hall of Fame. But football is so restrictive on the number of the guys that they let in, it's going to be tough, in my opinion, to see a guy like Mike Vick squeak in, especially while he's alive. Jeremy didn't hear us, so I'll summarize it really quickly. The Bears, I was all in on Matt Nagy not calling a good game and not going power football when the defense was playing that well. I would like to see Montgomery and Mike Davis pound the rock right up the middle more than they did. They tried it a couple times, it worked, and then mysteriously they went back to throwing the ball and rushing to the outside. Didn't really work after that. Green Bay was great on the outside. I didn't really see it on the inside as much. So I think Matt Nagy cost the Bears their game. The Bears' defense is amazing. The Bears' play calling, less so. Mitch Trubisky needs more time. We're not sitting there criticizing him too much just yet.
Right. Nathan, thanks for the comment, man. He says he don't know if Vic lost. He probably won a lot of dogfights.
I don't know. I wasn't there.
No one wins dogfights.
Also,
man.
Sharif says the line of the week, and we're going to talk about this in just a second, is take the Titans at 5.5 versus the Browns. Amen, Sharif. I'm taking them in the pick'em. Spoiler alert, I'm taking the Titans in the pick'em, not just because I'm a fan, but because I love cohesion in the early weeks of football. The Titans defense is pretty much all going to be familiar. The only guy they've really added that's going to be any kind of difference is Cameron Wake. And when you're adding a 37-year-old that has the pressure rate that Cameron Wake does, I like where that's at. We'll talk about it in a minute. I don't need your downer opinion just yet. The Browns also have changed a lot of stuff over. I'm with you on that one. I like that line. Okay, a couple more here.
Rodney, we have not talked about the Cowboys yet. And, man, Rodney, if you go back...
We've talked about Zeke for like 6 weeks
I was going to say, you go back to like 6, 7, 8 episodes.
Yes.
We have a section literally dedicated for Zeke almost every one of those episodes.
Okay, Tyreek Hill, new contract. 3 years, $54 million extension for the maybe most dynamic player in the NFL. He's a game breaker. I like that they got this deal done early, and they don't have to pay him money that's just super asinine. That, he's not blowing the receiver numbers away. This kind of puts him on par with some of the other guys like Julio Jones. I like that they got it done early, so there's no mystery of it. I do worry about the Chiefs a little bit. They paid Frank Clark. Mahomes is going to be coming up here in a couple of years. They're going to have to pay Travis Kelce again, more than likely, to keep him around. The Chiefs have a lot of guys to pay, but that means you have a lot of talent. So I do like locking this up early and investing in the guy that's as young as Tyreek Hill is and as dynamic as Tyreek Hill is, because I think Tyreek Hill is what makes the Chiefs' offense as special as it is. Patrick Mahomes looks great, but we saw Alex Smith have one of the most dynamic seasons of his career, basically on the back of Tyreek Hill.
And Kelsey's really good. But we've also seen Kelsey get 3 receptions and 30 yards, and the Chiefs still win by 30.
Right.
So I'm with you, man. Actually, his contract makes him tied with the second highest paid receiver per year. I think this is huge. I mean, this guy was about to make just shy of $2 million in his rookie contract, the last year of it. This keeps the guy the next 3 years in the organization for the foreseeable future. And to be honest with you, in my opinion, this is a contract that it is team friendly because it's only 3 years. We're not giving him a 5-year, a 6-year extension.
It is an extension, right?
But we're not giving him that huge extension where some of those receivers kind of drop off. I mean,
speed is a hard thing to hang on to. You break a leg, all of a sudden that speed can go out the window.
And don't get me wrong, Tyreek is definitely known for being fast. But one thing that he's very underrated about is his route running ability. When he first got to the league, everyone was like, man, this guy's quick, but he can't run routes. Year 2, this guy was almost running the most perfect routes you could think of in a Kansas City uniform. This is huge for the Chiefs, and I'm excited for the future. As long as he just keeps his hands off his children, we're good to go.
I agree. I absolutely agree with you on that one. At least when I look at this deal, this is the kind of deal you want to make for a guy that's tremendously fast, because you could have a Chris Johnson situation where you've got like 1 year a dynamic player and then the next year he's all used up. Especially speed does not stick around the older you get. Yeah. 3 years is like the perfect length for this. I think they did a good job of paying him while he's worth something, but also having that deal kind of expire when it might not be.
I'll give you that, but there has been one Chief that speed never lost, and that was Dante Hall, and that's the guy that he idolized.
And they're all different positions. So it's one of those things that running backs are going to take more hits. The thing is, you never know with a receiver. You lose that speed, all of a sudden Tyreek Hill might not be special. But I will give you this, Drew. You're 100% right. It's not just speed with Tyreek Hill. It's the route running. It's his ability to get open. It's his hands. That's what separates him from a guy like John Ross, who also happens to just be fast. Also, Sharif says Vic in the dogfighting is not getting him in the Hall of Fame, but Favre got in the Hall of Fame. While he held the team hostage for 3 years, that's on the field, not a big deal. Didn't want to mentor Aaron Rodgers. Okay, we've got a lot of guys like that. Tom Brady didn't want to mentor Jimmy Garoppolo, so he had them traded. Every quarterback doesn't want to mentor the guy that's coming up behind him because they don't want him to take their job. That's not a big issue. The only thing I will say is Favre sent dick pics to female workers and reporters for the Packers. I think it was a reporter that he did that to. It might have been more than one woman. I don't know. Yeah, and he also had taken some pills. I get it, but how many guys are not on pills at this point in the NFL? There's a lot of guys who have come out and said, hey, I do it because it helps me control the pain. Yeah, the dick pic thing is an issue. But also Brett Favre's won Super Bowls. Or at least one.
One.
Yeah, and he's gone to multiple. So I think that kind of factors into it, number one. I also think the stats factor into it, too, because there was a point in time where he was leading in, like, every quarterback stat ever. Like, yards, touchdowns, interceptions, all of them. Favre was leading the way there. That's why teams were willing, or that's, I think, why people were going to consider that. Mike Vick, you were never like, he's leading in passing. He led in rushing for a quarterback, but I still don't think rushing yards gets the same kind of...
That's what, maybe the third or fourth stat they might look at?
Exactly. No, it's going to be completion percentage, touchdowns, passing yards.
Exactly.
That's what people care about with quarterbacks. I think that's the difference there. Yeah, Brett Favre wasn't the perfect candidate either, but he won a Super Bowl and was also holding a bunch of records at the time he retired. So
I'm going to throw
that's the difference.
I'm going to throw the pitchers out of the window. That literally means nothing when it comes to Hall of Fame. And when you talk about pill popper, man, I mean, that's the answer for doctors in NFL from literally the early 80s to literally just a couple years ago, where they're like, hold on, we're killing our players because of this.
Right.
I mean, there's a few decades in between that. Every one of those players were pill poppers. And just because someone got addicted to it, that's, I'm sorry, in my opinion, an addiction is a disease. And a lot of these guys didn't have an option in the sense of either I don't play because I'm in pain, or I take this little pill and I play.
And I can play again. Right.
And
Absolutely.
I get to make a paycheck. I think it's unfair to call him a pill popper.
Also, Jeremy said, is Hill's contract going to hurt Amari Cooper's next contract? I think it hurts the Cowboys. Because, again, things always go up. So now that they've got Tyreek Hill as, tied or second highest paid wide receiver after this extension, it's only going to hurt the Cowboys because that Amari Cooper's number probably went up as well. Everybody wants to have the ego of, I'm the highest paid receiver in the NFL. I'm the highest paid. I'm the most valued receiver in the NFL. I think that's going to increase the number that Amari Cooper winds up asking the Cowboys for. Nathan,
Mike, good to see you, man.
Absolutely. Nathan says Kelce might be as good or better than Gronkowski. I think Gronkowski in his prime was probably the more dominant tight end, but I think Travis Kelce has been the more durable tight end. I guess it all depends on what you value. I think Gronkowski probably had more dominant performances, but I think Travis Kelce, again, just for the fact that he's been this good for this long, there's an argument to be made that he's better than Gronkowski. He didn't have to retire at 29.
He's about to say he's healthier than Gronkowski.
Definitely.
They played for different teams. When you play for the Patriots, you kind of get overhyped. I mean, look at former Patriots leaving a lot of organizations and not doing well. That's definitely. Sorry, we got a Amber Alert. Everyone, keep your kids safe, please. That got me off track here. What was I saying? Oh, when you play for the Patriots, you get overhyped, and you get a lot of success without it being your success, because you kind of live in the shadow of like Belichick's greatness as play calling and scheming, and Tom Brady's way of playing, where he just doesn't turn the ball over and he makes great decisions. And you sit there and you look at like Deion Branch or any of those other players that I could think of that were like, this guy is a free agent that he's going to do well, and he goes off to another organization.